Assalamu alaikum. We are so excited to have you guys, and I would like to thank the CCF for reaching out to us for me to be the guest host. I'm Zuhaira Abu Bakr, the proud daughter of Shukri Abu Bakr, who was part of the Holy Land Foundation case that was in a couple episodes back. We are really excited today for this special webinar that we're having. We are going to have a special guest who's also an impacted family member, Sonali Sadiki, who is a holistic health coach. We're going to be talking about different aspects of our lives that have been impacted as family members, who have loved ones who have been imprisoned unjustly. This is episode 17 of Injustice at Home webinar for CCF. So let's get started. Today we're going to talk about how to really focus on taking the good things the bad things that have happened to us and turning them into positive. Of course, addressing all of the ways that we've been impacted, individually and collectively, to transform the impact of the stress and the trauma from the criminalization of Muslim communities and surveillance as on our health, physical, emotional, and spiritual resilience using the gifts of nutrition and somatic process. And Sonali is going to talk to us a lot more about these and give us amazing tips on how we can use these tips to kind of help our lives and actually feel better by our mind, body, and soul. So a collective, holistic method. I'm really sorry I have sinuses going on, so if my voice is in and out, I do apologize for that. So I'm just going to quickly introduce our lovely guest, Sonali Sadiki. She's the founder of Sustainable Wellness, a holistic lifestyle education and coaching practice that trains and supports community organizations, leaders, and activists who are dealing with stress and burnout on self-care and collective care strategies. Her trainings are informed by the natural healing tradition of, how do you pronounce it? Sonali, that's your thing.
Ayurveda?
Ayurveda, yoga, and trauma-informed relationship community building skills that help to transform the impact of collective trauma on our minds, bodies, hearts, and souls. She curates and facilitates healing programs that transform the impact of colonization, generation trauma, burnout by equipping groups and individuals with accessible and sustainable wellness and relational skills that enhance nervous system function and therefore support mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical well-being. So we're going to talk about all the things that have impacted our lives and how we can use those trauma or experiences and take the good from them and focus on the positive. You know, Sonali, you and I both can relate to how these horrible injustice have happened to our family members and how we've been affected personally on our personal level. But I think our goal today is also to reach out to the community and tell them that they're not the only ones feeling this way and they're not the only ones going through all of this, and that we are, as a community, we have to be there for each other and support one another. If you'd like to go ahead and start and tell us a little bit more about your experience and what you've been through, we'd love to hear that.
Oh, yes. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. And it's great to have this conversation with you, Zaira, and especially because you're a licensed counselor as well as an impacted family member. And I'm just really excited to begin this conversation so that we can actually dive deep into it and pull together so many different kind of resources and wisdom that you bring and then that I bring to be able to really create something that's going to be very relevant and pertinent to our families and our loved ones. But before I dive in, I just wanted to go ahead and bring my brother into the camera here. I actually, he was taken away from us about 15 years ago, but he just recently got released out of prison, and so he's now home with us. So alhamdulillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Salam, we're so excited to see you back home.
This is Ehsan Sadiki. All right, thank you, Shifa. All right. So yes, so grateful to CCF for creating this program. I want to go ahead and begin by saying, of course, my brother is out now, and but 15 years ago in 2006, when he was first taken away, there was so much fear and anxiety and so much sleepless nights. We had to run around so many and talk to so many people not just attorneys, but of course, attorney meetings after attorney meetings, and also our loved ones and our community folks. And then also we had, at that time, the media, right? Mass media was harassing us as well. We would get constant phone calls for weeks and weeks and weeks. And not to mention the fact that, we just had my younger brother snatched away and put in jail. And we didn't know for about 3.5 years. He was in solitary confinement, and this is pre-trial. So for 3.5 years, we're in this limbo, not knowing what's going to happen with him, right? That had a huge impact in my ability and of course, my family. It changed the way that we coped with life, right? Or I should say, there's so much stress and just being scared, like what's going to happen with him? How is he? And he's in solitary confinement day after day after day. And this was in Atlanta. And I don't know if you all know this, but the federal prison in Atlanta is one of the worst in the country. And both in terms of their treatment of the inmates, but also the treatment of the families who are visiting their loved ones in prison, but also just even like the prison itself, it was just so old and dingy, and there's like rats and mosquitoes. I mean, it's just such a horrendous place, and so I remember there would be times I would wake up in the middle of the night, just worried about my little brother. And I had never had sleep issues before in my life, before those years. And I remember feeling like constantly turned on meaning like not being able to rest and relax, because we were running around so much. And that's because of stress, right? That's because of the trauma of having to deal with having a loved one taken away. And so I'll pause there for now. I mean, I can keep talking about all the different ways that it impacted me, my health, my family's life. Like, my mother, she ends up getting ulcer. Ulcer, as you all know, is a stomach virus condition. My dad's heart condition started elevating. And so there's a lot that happens that our physical bodies take on so much impact because of mental and emotional stress. And I'm gonna share a lot more about that. As a result of this journey of having to deal with my brother being taken away 15 years ago, I've learned so much about how to better take care of myself, and how to better navigate the trauma and the stress in a way that actually is supportive to my sustainability, my long-term, so I could do this work. Because we know that, when my brother was taken away, we were, we faced like 15 years behind bars, and it's a long journey, and so I had to figure out, how do I set up myself so that I don't burn out, so that I don't get so depleted that I'm just, useless. Like, how do I set myself up so that I can be in this work for the long run? And I've had to figure this out. And alhamdulillah, it's been a deeply growing process and a learning process. And this is part of what I'm sharing with you all today. And that's what I'm here to share with you all today. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Sonalia. It was so deeply touching. And I know that talking about it brings things back and brings emotions back. So I just want to say, as a family member, I know how hard it is sometimes to talk about these things. And I know that if we were to sit and talk about details, it would take us maybe days and weeks to actually explain everything that we've been through. So you summarized it in such a lovely way, and we really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I think that's what's so important about today. It's like really to focus on, just like the name of this webinar is, to transform the trauma we're facing as a minority community. And we've been victimized by this war and terror, post 9/11 hysteria. And it's really, really affected us and impacted us, but we haven't really been talking about it as much. And there's just been so much trauma with the family members that, although it happens at this, like, let's say it happened in 2006, you carry that on for years and years. And I think, acknowledging the feelings that we're facing as a whole, as a community, really unites us together and really humbles us to know, like, you know what, I'm not the only one feeling this. I can relate to you. I don't have to specifically go through what you went through, but I get the feeling. And just focusing on different skills that Sanal, you're going to help us out with. I know personally with my father, he's facing 65 years for being the CEO of the largest Muslim community charity, American charity. And it's been tough. And, throughout those years, it's been 12 years. My grandpa passed away, my sister passed away. And, like you said, like, it's so hard to even explain the prison itself, the eerie feeling that you have, the visitations, and how difficult even the visitations are. So there's so many aspects. It's not just they're in prison. There's so many aspects that surround that. Like, your relationships with others will change. The way you deal with the stress, and of all people, that stress affects us in every aspect of our bodies. They always say that stress is the number one killer. So I'm really excited to hear more from you on how we can really cultivate these things into a positive way, and really acknowledging what we're going through and saying that it's okay to feel these ways, but there are techniques to help us get through this as a whole. You talked about the different things that, the main feelings that we feel, such as, stress, sleep disturbance, paranoia. You said you weren't sleeping for a while, feeling isolated, depression. There's so many feelings that we're going to be feeling. So can you let us know, how would you like to start off by telling us what tips, what can we start off? What is the number one step for us to get through all this?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. I'm actually going to go ahead and start sharing my presentation, if that's okay. Right. So I hope that's coming up. Is that showing?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, and everybody else can see it too, I hope. All right, there we go. All right, so yes, so here we are. Before I dive in too deep, I do want to disclaim here that part of what I want to share with you all today is some quick and easy practices, both practices for our nervous system, but also practices for our physical body, our emotional, mental, and nutritional health and well-being, so that we can really sustain ourselves for the long haul. So that's what my intention is to share with you all today. So, thank you, Zaira, for listing all of those things. And again, this is just a brief list. I'm sure if we're asking our loved ones watching this today, what other experiences and challenges have you experienced, we could probably add on to this list. This list can probably go on for another couple of dozens of experiences. But we know that some of the common things is, feeling anxious, not being able to sleep. Another thing that happens when our nervous system is really revved up and it's not being able to get into a restful place is that we can get really emotionally reactive with people and in our relationships, and not really be able to de-escalate situations, right? We can also feel really just down in the dumps, like we have no energy, we feel exhausted, we feel depleted, or we feel numb even, right? Shut down, and we don't want to deal with it and deal with life, and these are all common and absolutely normal reactions to something that is totally stressful, overwhelming, and traumatizing, and that I just wanted to say that there's nothing wrong with having to experience the anxiety, the stress, the numbness, all this stuff. It's part of it, is what happens when our nervous systems are experiencing so much trauma and overwhelm. The body holds on to this stress, the body, and I'm talking like our muscles, right? Our bones, our organs. Heart is responding to this stress. Our kidneys, our liver, our digestive system especially is reacting to the stress that we're experiencing. And it's really important to understand, if we're to understand what we need to do, we first have to understand how mental, psychological, and emotional stress actually influences the physical body, right? And you mentioned this earlier, Zaira. You said, there's a lot of stress hormones, right? One specific one that there's been tons and tons, literally hundreds and probably thousands by now, of research is cortisol, right? There's several other stress hormones that are moving through our system, sewing through our system when we get stressed, but cortisol is one of the most studied. And what we do know is that when we're experiencing so much stress, our cortisol levels go up, right? And that has an inflammatory, if it goes up too much, right? It creates an inflammatory reaction in our body. And when the inflammation or the inflammatory condition is continuing on day after day, month after month, it actually has an impact in our immune system and our nervous system, our mood, our brain, right? It has an impact there. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I'll break that down as we go on down the webinar. Okay. And I just wanted to say, here's a few other things. How do we recognize, right? If we're experiencing paranoia, right? Nightmares, poor decisions, right? Or we're having trouble paying attention, remembering, on a regular basis. And it's normal, to forget things from time to time. But if you're noticing that it's happening more and more, then, and any of these, right? It impacts our emotional well-being. It impacts our physical, our sleep problems, stomach upset, like hypervigilance, right? Spiritual, right? We can affect us spiritually, like feeling like guilt or doubt, or self-harming thoughts even, right? Behaviorally, eating disorders, right? Or self-injury, addiction, and then relationships, angry at others, or we're isolating from others even, right? Missing work. So these are just some of the common reactions that can happen when we're overwhelmed or experiencing chronic stress. So I wanted to share this with you all. This is understanding the biology of the nervous system. When we are when we're experiencing overwhelm, trauma, right? Chronic, like deep level stress on a chronic way, or even like in an acute way, right? We have in our nervous system, which is known as the autonomic nervous system. It's the part of our nervous system that is automatic. Like you don't have to think about it. Like you don't think and you don't tell your heart, make sure you're beating today, right? No, it's automatic. It just does it automatically. So it's part of the automatic nervous system. So and that nervous system is broken down into two parts. We have the sympathetic. The sympathetic part of our nervous system is the one that gets activated, right? It's the part that gets activated to help us to take action real quick, right? It helps us to be able to make quick decisions or for our survival ultimately, right? And so when the sympathetic nervous system gets kicked up or activated, our heart rate goes up. We might start sweating. We might start breathing really fast, right? Our stress hormones go up, right? And our digestive capabilities, our rest and digest, actually goes down. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because when we are like biologically, and evolutionary wise, if we're under danger, like if we're in the wild and there's a tiger, right, coming at us, or something that's really, really dangerous for our survival, we have to take really quick action. So our physical body has to rev up so that we can take really quick action to be able to keep ourselves physically safe, right? Run away or fight whatever's coming our way if we're able to fight, right? So it's our fight and flight, freeze, submit kind of response system. So that's the sympathetic. Let's go into the opposite side. The parasympathetic is the part of our nervous system that helps us to relax, that helps us to digest our food, right? It helps us to sleep, helps us to integrate the nutrition from our food, right? It slows down our heart rate. It brings down our stress hormones, right? It helps us to develop digestive enzymes and saliva in our mouth, right? So when we are in a relaxed state or not at the brim of stress, then the parasympathetic nervous system is online, right? It's working, it's functioning for us. So now here's the problem that I think is so important for all of us to understand is that when we are in a chronic stress because our loved ones have been taken away and or they're experiencing some hardship and in prison, right? Or we're having to take care of our figure out how we can take care of our own self, right? As we are living life in the outside, like we got to run around, we got to think about how we're going to go see our loved one in prison, we got to make sure how do we put food on the table and rent and all of that, right? Those are chronic stress. And so when we're in this mode of chronic stress, guess what happens? It's harder for our body to turn on the parasympathetic system because it's activated. It's chronically under stress. So the sympathetic nervous system is online and it stays online chronically. And here's the thing, is that it's not designed. Our bodies are not meant to be in a sympathetic state day after day after day after day, month and month, right? It's not meant to be. When it does stay online, the sympathetic nervous system stays online for a long time, it actually has a whole domino negative side effect. And it can, because of that, because of the sympathetic nervous system kind of being online and never shutting down, right, does impact our sleep. It can impact our appetite. It can impact our ability to be able to make sound decisions, right? So we kind of get locked up in that. And so what do we do? What do we do to, here's the thing, if our loved one is in prison for years and years and years, what can we do to make sure that we are able to be at our best place, be able to rest, be able to sleep, be able to eat well, so that we can show up best for our loved ones, right? And there are things that we know that we can do nutritionally, that we can do with our lifestyle practices that will give the parasympathetic nervous system an extra boost, like an extra nudge, like we can actively take on a little bit more of an active, intentional role, I like to say it, to bring on the parasympathetic system, okay? And that's kind of what some of the practices are gonna be about. So does that answer your question, Zaira, for now?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. I love how the visual really gets you to understand, because I think that's so true for so many of us. I feel like we're actually been stuck in the flight or fight stage, and we really haven't been able to go down because we're just always ready to go. We haven't even had time to sit and process what's happened to our family members because we're just in that flight or fight. We're just trying to get through and get by day, that we don't really have time to just do that self-care or even just sit time and process what's been happening to us as family members. And so I'm just really excited about hearing about how can we take care of our body, mind, and spirit.
Okay, so yes, so being able to take care of our hearts, our mind, body, spirit, puts us at a place where we can be more resilient, right? And what is resiliency? It's our ability, and I like to see resiliency as both an individual resiliency, but also community, collective resiliency, right? Because when we are resilient, we're more regulated, we're able to handle ourselves better, and guess what? It has a ripple effect on the people around us as well. It helps them regulate better when they're able to witness that we're regulated. It's what we call co-regulation, right? And so yes, so resiliency is our ability to be really present in the moment while we're managing everything we have to manage, right? And so we're not falling into the weight, the burden of all that we have to manage, but that we're able to like handle it, you know? We have a greater sense of resiliency, and I'll show you guys what I mean by that is, so if you look at this bar, the red bar here, the two bars, if you think about it, like this is a resilient zone. And when I say resilience, I actually mean something very specific. The resilient zone is where, say, okay, in a given day, right? You wake up in the morning and you feel okay, you know, and maybe you are looking forward to your day, or because you know there's one something positive might happen, you know. But then you also remember everything that's on your plate, and so you kind of get worried, you know, and that kind of brings down your energy a little bit, you know, your emotional energy. Okay, and then you get your day started, and then maybe you feel a little tired, you know, and then there might be, maybe there's a time in your day where you are feeling relaxed, but all the while we go through all kinds of different emotions throughout the day, and we're okay. We're handling whatever's happening, right? That's what we call being in the okay zone, right? Yeah, you know, you might get a little worried, or yeah, you might get a little sad, or yes, we might get a little angry or irritated or anxious, but we're able to handle it. When we're able to handle it, we call that being in your resilient zone, okay? Even when we might get a little scared, right? We're able to come back and regulate ourselves, right? We're able to regulate ourselves, and we're still in control. We feel like we got this, right? But sometimes, especially in our cases, a lot of times, right? There are constantly like one thing after another that happens in our life that, like, you know, just feels really, really scary or really, really stressful. You know, especially if we find ourselves saying, God, there's always something that's just always throwing me off, right? That's oftentimes, like, if we feel something has happened and then it sends us too high, we can feel really edgy, irritable, anxious, right? We can have angry outbursts, and we feel like we're not able to really bring ourselves back into our zone, like be okay with all of that that's going on. That, what we call that is getting bumped up, right? Bumped up and out of your zone. But then the opposite can happen as well, where we feel so depleted, we feel so drained, we feel so shut down, numb, you know, and depressed and sad. And we call that being bumped down or bumped low, right? Now, here's the thing. None of us like to get stuck either in the high zone or in the low zone. We don't want to get stuck either one of these zones on a chronic way. It's when we get stuck in these zones and we're not able to bring ourselves back into our okay zone, that's when we start to feel like this is overwhelming, this is not working out, this is not sustainable, I can't go with this, something's totally off, right? And that's the whole thing, is that's how we want to identify ourselves. Like, where are we? Are we in our okay zone, or are we feeling too bumped up and stuck there? Or are we feeling bumped low and stuck there? Because if we are, I want to invite us into everything that we're going to be talking about today in terms of practices. Because these practices that we're about to get into is going to help us to increase our resilience zone, widen our ability, expand our ability to be able to deal with the ups and downs, so that we have a wider ability. And even when we go bumped up high, guess what? It's still within our okay zone. Like, we got this. We got the resiliency, the nervous system resiliency, to be able to handle, or to be able to respond more consciously, right? Or respond with a greater sense of tools and resources to be able to handle that. And it's totally possible, y'all. I just want to say it's completely possible. It takes a bit of practice and it takes a bit of tools and resourcing. Okay. So, which is all about the lifestyle practices, right? So with that, I want to go ahead, if it's okay with you, Zaira, would you want me to go ahead and share one little practice?
Of course.
Okay. So this is our skill number 1 today. And this is a practice that you can do sitting where you're seated right now as you're watching this with me. You can actually practice this before you start driving, if you're feeling stressed, or after you start driving, in your transitions from one event to another throughout your day. And it's a practice called tracking. And this is really important. What are we tracking for? You are tracking for physiological sensations in your body. Physiological, not emotional feelings, but physiological. So what are the physiological sensations? And this is really important to distinguish between your emotional feelings and your physiological feelings. Okay, distinguish those two. A lot of us are used to talking about emotional feelings. Oh, I feel great, I feel fun, I feel stressed out, I feel scared, I feel, right? These are emotional feelings. What I want to invite you into doing right now is start to think about your feelings also in terms of physiological feelings. So what are those? These are some examples right here on the screen. Physiological experiences come in the form of temperature, right? Or muscle tone, like something feels tight or something feels calm and loose. It can feel heavy, right? In the form of weight, heavy, firm. It can come in the form of texture. Something feels smooth, something feels rough. It feels roundy, it feels edgy, right? It feels sharp, like, so anything. And of course, you want to begin to tune into your physical body and begin to actually not just feel the physiological sensations, but also I want to invite you into taking it to the next level, which is about naming, actually verbalizing the sensation that you are experiencing. Because when you begin to name the actual physiological sensation, even if it's just 1 or 2 words is enough. Just 1 or 2 words. When you sit, and I'm going to guide you all through this, when you sit and tune in, right? Tune into your body and you begin to feel whatever you feel physiologically and you begin to put words to it. What you're doing is you are beginning to open up the prefrontal cortex of your brain. That part of your brain that helps you to regulate better everything that's happening in your life. And that's why we practice this. So let's go ahead and get to it. Zaira, you want to join along? Okay.
Hey.
Good. So I want to invite whoever's watching this, all of us, to get comfortable wherever you're seated. Just whatever's comfortable to you. Maybe you'd begin to lean back in your chair. Put down any pen or paper that you're holding and sit however way it's comfortable for you, really. And then maybe you close your eyes or you keep it open, whatever's comfortable to you. And if you're joining along, I invite you to begin to bring your awareness to your body. And notice your body breathing. Notice the inhalation and the exhalation. Know that there is no right or wrong way to track, as long as you are simply allowing yourself to feel the physiological sensations, whatever they may be, as long as you're in the process of noticing whatever you notice, just being in the process of it, you are beginning to track. You are practicing tracking. And as you breathe, notice that when you inhale, there's an expanded the rising experience of your chest. And then when you exhale, notice the chest moving inward, the rising and the falling. And then also notice your muscle tone. Notice places that feel soft or not, places that feel relaxed or not. And also notice the temperature in different places in your body. Notice the places in your body that feel cooler or warmer than other areas. And next, invite you to bring your hands together and maybe just let your hands press onto each other. Maybe letting your palms make contact. And just notice the texture of your hands. How is it feeling today? Notice the temperature of your hands. What is one or two words that you would use right now to describe what you are sensing? Once you have those one or two words, just invite you to just sit with those sensations and notice what in your body right now feels pleasant or neutral. Invite you to bring your awareness to a place in your body that feels pleasant or neutral. Maybe it's your cool hands, or maybe it's your relaxed belly. Maybe it's your feet. I invite you to continue to feel the pleasant or neutral sensation. If you're experiencing anything unpleasant, know that it's completely okay. I invite you to see if you can redirect your awareness to a more pleasant or neutral location. And as we get ready to transition, I invite you to begin to prepare yourself. And as you're ready, when you're ready, taking your time, continuing to feel and sense your body, I invite you to open your eyes as you come back into the space around you and into this presentation. All right. So now I want to invite you to just check in. How's that? Has anything shifted or not? Has anything shifted in your mind or not? How about you, Zaira? You want to share?
I just want to take a nap now. I feel super relaxed.
Okay. So, yeah.
Thank you. That was really nice and helpful.
Okay. So it's really helpful if your nervous system is revved up, then it has a way of relaxing the nervous system.
Right.
So that's one practice that I like to say that we can do to come back into the neocortex and also help us to regulate our nervous system better. Okay. Next question.
All right. So that was amazing. So how do we support our spiritual resilience? So right now we talked more about like how to help our body feel and be aware of the feelings. And this was an amazing practice. How would you think, what are some tips on how to, actually before that, I think we skipped one of them, the physical health well-being. Any tips on what we can give our bodies to help through these hard times that we face, or the feelings, emotions, the physical feelings that we're feeling? And sometimes we don't know what the answers to them. We go to the doctor and they're like, you're fine, but we know we're feeling something physically.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and get into that. And I always like to put in a little disclaimer when I talk about nutrition.
Right.
So I just wanted to say I am a holistic health coach. I'm not a medical practitioner. And so anything that I'm about to share is not meant to be it's not meant to be medical advice, and that I actually encourage you to speak with your medical providers before applying anything that I'm about to talk about, okay? So yeah, my role is to really educate you with all kinds of information that I know is out there that are very, very helpful, and funnel it and bring it to you. So educate you on these things, and then you decide for yourself what is going to be best for you. Okay, right. So I do want to say that there's been a lot of research done in the recent 5-10 years, specifically about the gut. And there's always been research done about the gut. But what we're finding is that in the recent decade or so is that there is a lot of connection between gut health and mental health and immune health, right? Immune system. So the healthier that our gut is, and the way that the gut is supposed to function, that means our digestive system, our gastrointestinal system, right? If it's functioning the way it's supposed to function, the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us, then we also emotionally feel resilient and strong and sustainable and just on, like, beautifully, like on. And our immune system is also strong and resilient. Okay, but if the gut is suffering, because we have all kinds of different gut issues, right? Whether it be indigestion, acid reflux, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, right? Or SIBO, small intestinal bowel bacterial overgrowth, like these kind of things, constipation, chronic constipation, or diarrhea. Like if we're experiencing these kind of things on a chronic way, that's just a sign. That's the body saying, hey, pay attention to me, fix me up. I need extra support here. Whatever you're doing isn't helping me. It's keep making me irritable, right? Give me some attention, right? So that's we know that when we do give it attention, everything else kind of comes into place. So a study found that 50 to 90% of people with gut issues who have visited doctors, all their digestive issues also had panic disorders, like general anxiety disorders, social phobia, post-traumatic. And so what does that mean? It means that the gut and the emotional stuff is so closely linked, okay? So if we're dealing with emotional stuff, if we take care of our gut, even like make it even stronger, it's actually gonna help us to better deal with our emotional stuff, okay? So, the other thing to keep in mind is that 3/4 of our immune system, right, actually lives in and around our gut, okay? So specifically the intestinal lining, which is the membrane of our intestine. There's a lot of intelligence, which we don't have time to get into right now, of the intestinal lining and what the purpose of the intestinal lining is. If the intestinal lining is impacted or inflamed, it's going to create all kinds of issues. It's like a domino effect. Because ultimately what it does is that the inflamed intestinal lining actually leaks food particles into our bloodstream where food particles are not supposed to be. And when that happens, it can actually create all kinds of like food allergies, for example, or autoimmune issues. And it can also affect our brain because it actually crosses the blood-brain barrier, right? So inflammation. I just wanted to say, like, if we're dealing with, and this is just a very brief list, there's actually more to this list, but if we're dealing with some of these conditions, These are actually a result of chronic inflammation happening in our gut. So now let's take a look at this little image here that I pulled from Google. This one, all the way to the, I guess y'all's left, where you see the nerves here coming out of the brain. This is actually the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve connects to the brain and it goes down our neck, and then it connects to the heart center here. And then it keeps going down, 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 and it connects to the intestines, right? So what does this mean? It means that whatever we eat, this vagus nerve is picking up on, and because it's a nerve that's connected to the brain, guess what? It's sending it back into the brain. So we call this the gut-brain axis. It's a two-way highway, and anything that we're experiencing in our mind and in our brain is also going to, or anything we're perceiving, right? If we're perceiving something with our eyes and our senses, it's also going to influence our gut, our digestion, right? Remember what we covered earlier, right? Trauma, overwhelm, stress actually impacts our physical body, right? And it impacts our digestion specifically. And remember, that's why when we're in a sympathetic state, our rest and digest it shuts down. And then when we're relaxed, we're able to digest our food better. So let's go into here a little bit. Okay, so this is talking a little bit more about how the intestinal lining is so important for us to fix up and make sure that gut is working, it's really tuned up and refined. I wanted to talk about, these are some of the nutrients that we want to make sure that we're eating on a regular basis to really keep our immune system strong and keep our gut functioning really well, right? And especially nowadays where we're in pandemic and we're also going into a fall season here in North America. And so it's really important that we bring in the proper nutrients that our body needs to be able to be resilient, like physiological resilience. So what are these things? Of course, eat foods that will help us to balance our serotonin levels, right? What are like lots of plant foods really help us with that, like greens, lentils. Green foods is number one food, I believe. We need to have at least a bowl or a cup of green packed in tightly every day if you're an adult. Root vegetables, of course, are excellent. Whole grain pastas that are either low gluten or gluten-free is really important. Probiotics, we're going to talk a lot more about that. B complexes. Vitamin C, zinc, magnesium, curcumin, which is anti-inflammatory, ginger, anti-inflammatory, right? People are getting a lot of iron, unless you're anemic or you have some sort of a specific condition, then you don't really need iron if you're eating a lot of green vegetables like you're supposed to. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this is so huge, y'all. And this has mainly been coming out in the last 10 years. The importance, and we're talking about like some of the frontier in the nutrition world, right, is really understanding how the microbiome, the gut flora, right, the ecology of our digestive system works. It's so intelligent. We have all these probiotics, we have all these bacteria in our gut, and they are so intelligent. And there are different bacteria for different processes and functions of our life, of our like physical life. And for example, like we have minerals, there's certain minerals that do certain things, right? Vitamins, there's certain vitamins that do certain things. Bacteria is very similar. There is bacteria for certain things. And there's bacteria, guess what, y'all? For emotional well-being. So what are those? Let's, just for the sake of time, we're gonna go ahead and get into it. There is this is just one brand. There's several brands out there, but I like the brand Garden of Life, and I would really recommend people getting into it because there's been a lot of trials around these particular strains of bacteria that are really supportive to emotional health and well-being. Okay, so again, for the sake of time, I'm going to rush through this. There's also certain herbs that you all want to get into and maybe talk to your healthcare providers about this, but there's herbs for mental focus. These are the herbs for sleep to help you to rest better. And then there's one for energy boosting and just helping you to regulate your source of energy in the body. So y'all can rewind this presentation if you want to take a look at these list again. So that basically covers, in a nutshell, some of the physiological, nutritional things that you all can do to support your gut health, your immune health, and your emotional health. Okay. So now for these, you wanted to talk about the spiritual aspect, right?
Yes, I actually took pictures of those. Are those actually safe for kids as well, or is it only for adults?
So these are definitely good for adults. Now for kids, you definitely want to look into kid dosage. Not all of them I would recommend for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely talk to your healthcare provider. And the dosing is what will have to change. And then on some of them, I would not give to kids.
Okay, awesome.
But
awesome.
I would say if anybody has any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me. Here's my website address right here. And I can do a more one-on-one, more customized, more specific kind of coaching process with you, like I do with my clients.
Awesome. So we talked about mind and body, and so now the soul, our spiritual resilience. What tips do you have for that?
Gosh, this is so, it depends, right? I think we all have our own, hopefully, we all have our own practices, right? Like, of course, as Muslims, our prayer is a huge one for us, depending on how that is for us. I like to spend a lot of time with myself. That is absolutely key for me. Some of it depends on our personality too, right? Like I find that a lot of clients that I have that are introverted, like myself, we have to have our solo time. We have to have our downtime. We have to spend time with our own self in reflection. And that actually helps our spiritual resiliency, right? Whereas some of us that are more extroverted, maybe we gather more spiritual resiliency by having conversations and time and spending meaningful time with others, right? And so I would love to ask you that question. What would you say, Zaira?
Honestly, I think it really does depend. I mean, of course, we have the basics that our religion, provides for us, right? So we have like our salah, our prayer. But I think we're just in a time where we're just like always in a rush, going back to that flight or fight, that we don't even take time when we pray. And there's so much now with and because this is your field, there's so much more now about like yoga and meditating. But if we just go back to our roots, it was always there. You know what I mean? It was always there from day one. Like our prayers, our dhikr, our dua. You don't imagine, we have praying 5 times a day. If we just took those 5 times in a day, and really took that chance to connect with God and with ourselves, there goes your meditation. And we have it 5 times a day, right? And if you can't pray at the time, just that dhikr, just remembering Allah all the time on your tongue as well, just making sure that you're in that process of speaking good words, amazing words, that somehow brings it back to, okay, this is what I'm doing. And being aware of what you're doing, I think, is really important, and being mindful of what you're saying. Dua, I mean, the power of dua, we grew up learning that it's beyond, it's metaphysical, right? So anything that you pray for, it might not come right away, but I think just knowing that you are having that one-on-one time with God and asking him for whatever, he's the one that can hear you, see you cry, laugh, everything at the same time, that you might not have that with anyone else, of course. I just think it's important, 100%. And I think if we do follow our religion the way we're supposed to, because I don't think any of us really do, we're just in a rush all the time, then we would be in a better place in general. But we just have so much going on. I think we forget to take that time to appreciate what we have in our religion.
Yes, alhamdulillah, exactly. And there's this one thing that we say in the holistic world is, if the more, basically, the busier you are, the more necessary it is for us to take at least, whatever time we can afford, so it's like, if you don't have any time during the day, that means, I usually say, that means take 1 hour to spend time in prayer or in meditation or in whatever spiritual practice that you have. But if you have a lot of time in your hands throughout your day, maybe then you just spend 10 minutes.
Right. Gotta make that time.
Sure. Yeah, so the busier we are, the more time we have to build in for our spiritual practices, our self-care practices, our wellness practices.
I think it's really important to take that time, and everyone knows themselves. Some people like to journal. Some people have to be out in nature. Some people just need that dark space to themselves. So kind of knowing what works for you might not work for someone else, but acknowledging what works for you and to do it. You know what I mean? And taking that time to do it is really important, for sure. So now that we're talking about, I think it brings back, like, our main focus is what do you think we should do as a community? How do we unite with all this? How do we take care of one another? Especially now with COVID, I feel like more people are feeling a lot lonely. There's that feeling of isolation, for sure. What do you recommend?
So, gosh, I definitely say that reaching out to people, especially people that we know is helpful for our heart and our soul, reach out extra to them, and be intentional about that reaching out. Like, actually say, hey, I'm actually wanting to speak with you because I would love to connect. I would love us to just socialize and hang out and have fun, even if it's on Zoom. And it's going to be for 30 minutes. It's going to be for 1 hour. Like, be very specific and realistic, so that we're creating the experience more intentionally. And so therefore we're going to be more successful at having that experience, right? And so, in other words, being more intentional, realistic, and in co-creating those experiences that actually help us. Spend less time with people that feel challenging, have boundaries, practice healthy boundaries. That feels really important. And how do we show up for each other, right? If we know that somebody's having a hard time, how do we reach out and offer support? And do we reach out and offer support and still be able to maintain our healthy boundaries, right? And that's really important. Another thing I wanted to say is that when we take time to do these practices for our own self, we're going to be better regulated, like I mentioned earlier. And that, just the mere presence of who we are, can help others that are around us, physically or virtually, And to me, that is the biggest, like, benefit of doing self-care, because it's not just for self-care anymore. It's actually for collective care. Like, when we're taking care of ourselves, we're actually taking care of our loved ones and our community better. And if we're not even doing that for ourselves, we're not taking the responsibility to take ownership and do our part, we're actually not going to be better for everybody else.
Absolutely, 100%. Totally agree. I couldn't say it any better. In order for us to take care of everyone else, we have to take care of ourselves. If we're not strong, spiritually, mentally, and physically, then we can't be there for each other. And it's really important for us to be able to be there for each other and support one another in every aspect. And, stress is really the number one killer. And you just explained through your slides how it affects your immune system and affects you physically. And, that sometimes when you're already feeling down, you feel like, when it rains, it pours. You literally feel like everything else is going downhill. But it's also because, like you explained, that if you're stressed, then your immune system is going down. So you're going to feel sick. You're going to feel, bad feelings, negative feelings. So I'm so excited. I think that hopefully you can share these slides with us so that we can, incorporate them in our daily lives. And really appreciate you taking the time, Sonali, to, inform us and educate us in really, really important aspects. And I think if we just take 5 minutes a day to do these things, we will see a difference in our everyday lives.
Yes, Alhamdulillah, yes. And I wanted to say that if y'all can, folks watching this, y'all can follow me on my Instagram. It's Sonali Wellness, SONALIWELLNESS. I also have a tiny little YouTube page, and the practices are on my YouTube page, the tracking practice, and then there's 2 more guided practices that takes it to the next level that I invite you all to practice. And they're all like less than 10 minutes. Zara, it was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This was amazing. Really appreciate everyone who tuned in, and we really hope that we can be able to help everyone as much as we can and be at your service in any way possible that we can. We're really excited, and there's going to be amazing things coming in the future, and we're really excited.
Right. And on that note, I want to say, I'm looking forward to continuing the conversations with you, as well as everybody else watching this. Leave us your comments, ask us your questions once you see this recording on our Facebook. Ask us the questions, and Zaira and I will follow up with you.
For sure. And maybe even put in things that you guys want to talk about other than questions. If there's topics or things that you guys want us to address or help out with, we are at your service. We're so excited. We can't wait to see more of you guys and talk to you guys and just be there for each other as a community.
Alhamdulillah, yes.
Thank you so much. Everyone have a great weekend.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.